What's happening? Happy Tuesday morning to all of you. Thanks for joining me. As always, it is very much appreciated. And finally, after spending the last few days podcast talking about the Boston Celtics in the finals, we get to the Patriots. I'm very excited to talk about the Patriots today. And before we get to Drake Maye, I want to give you the latest on Matthew Judon. Now, Judon was on the Rich Shirtleib show this morning, and this was transcribed by Mike Reese. The question via Mike Giardi on the show: is there anything being done about your contract? Last year, obviously, something was done about it, whether you were holding out or not. There was some debate about that, which you were kind of coy with, about not fully participating in some of the training camp stuff. Could we see a similar situation like that again if there isn't some sort of add to your contract this season? Here's what Judon told Giardi and Shirtleib this morning. Right now, I'm just going to get ready to play. You kind of keep throwing tantrums, and then you don't come out there and do what you're supposed to do. It kind of gets old real fast. I ain't really trying to do that. I'm just trying to come out here and play football, get ready for this upcoming season, and put our defense and ourselves in a position to where we can win the most games or to be the most effective. So that's kind of what I'm really on right now. I ain't worried about holding out, or sitting in, kind of protesting. I'm just going to come out here and kind of play, because last year that stuff was trash. I ain't really like that. I'm a football player. I don't really want to get into the agency side. So that's what I'm going to do. I'm going to come out here and play some football. Here's more from Giardi talking with Judon this morning. How far apart are you with the Patriots? Judon, bro, I'm in the building right now. We ain't far apart. You feel me? You see me with my helmet and jersey on yesterday. I'm not mad. Here's one more. Giardi on him getting a discount. Maybe they didn't know. Here's Judon, what I was going to be in for years. Maybe they knew exactly what I was going to be, and it's at a discount. That's just how it happens. So, again, Giardi asked him about this contract that he's currently on being a discount. He says maybe they didn't know what I was going to be in 4 years. Maybe they knew exactly what I was going to be, and it's a discount. That's just how it happens. I loved his answers. I love what Judon had to say. Honestly did. Because he's not going to be a distraction, at least from what he's saying. His intention is not to be a distraction during camp. Last year, you could say there was somewhat of a distraction because I think he was holding in. He was waiting for a contract bump. He got the contract bump. He came back. This year, he's not going to handle it that way. He is completely focused on playing football, which is great news. And the defense needs a fully focused Matthew Judon. Yes, they were a top 10 in DVOA last year at number 9, but Judon is a difference maker. He's an impact player. He is one of the best edge pass rushers in the NFL. He can also defend the run. So he is vital to this Patriots defense. So a focused, well-intended Matthew Judon, not worried about being coy about his contract, having those conversations with the media, that is a great thing for the Patriots. Fully focused, tunnel-visioned on the right thing, which is football. Now, I would imagine the Patriots are speaking with Judon about a contract. When you look at what the Patriots have done, they've kept their good football players, right? Extended Duggar, extended Uwenu, extended Anthony Jennings, brought back Joshua Uche. They extended David Andrews. We'll talk about Ramondre Stevenson a little bit later and what he said yesterday after mandatory minicamp. So I would just have to imagine, it's always dangerous assuming, but I would assume the Patriots are talking with Judon about that contract extension. Does it get done? We'll have to wait and see. All right, let's get to Drake Maye. Here's the disclaimer. I always try to give you the disclaimer as much as I can to keep things in perspective. It is June. If you haven't checked your calendar today, it's June 11th, 2024. We all understand that June is early. We all understand we're 3 months away from games actually counting. We get that it's mandatory minicamp. It's not even training camp. It's not joint practices. I understand that. Most of you understand that. The Patriots will have another minicamp practice tomorrow that I plan on being at. Yes, Greg Bedard came through. I'll be at practice tomorrow. Don't worry. You'll get a podcast at 11 a.m. I'll just have to record it before I head out because, of course, Patriots, Gerard Mayo, he meets with the media about 10 a.m. So I'll be out at the mandatory minicamp practice tomorrow. Looking forward to it, but we know there's another day left, right? So this is not to go too crazy. It's not to get ahead of ourselves. It's not to proclaim that Drake Maye is going to be a top 10 quarterback in the NFL this year, so we can all understand that, okay? There's the context. There's the nuance. It's mandatory minicamp. With that said, if you are not excited or happy with what you're reading, listening to, and watching about Drake Maye's progression, then I don't know what should make you happy. And I don't know what would make you happy. Drake Maye yesterday, again, was quarterback 2. So you go back to OTAs, and we wondered, OTAs, was that about just showing the media something? Maye had leapfrogged Bailey Zappi the last time the media watched the OTAs. Was it a one-day thing? Was it a permanent move? Well, yesterday, mandatory minicamp, day 1, there's Maye as QB2. So the OTA's QB2 thing, that was not a good job, Drake, we're going to give you a little bit of a gift. It was not that. It was not a case of gifting Drake Maye more snaps in a single OTA practice because he had done well a couple of practices prior. This was a move. He leapfrogged Zappi in OTAs. He stayed ahead of Zappi yesterday in mandatory minicamp. Right now, we can say that Drake Maye is your backup quarterback. This can change. Again, it's June. First mandatory minicamp practice. Maybe tomorrow something else happens. But as of right now, June 11th, 2024, on this Tuesday, we can say that Drake Maye is now QB2 and no longer QB3. It was a legitimate move up the depth chart by the rookie. Not only was Drake Maye QB2 yesterday at minicamp, we also saw a significant, underline that word, significant difference in reps. Now, I'm not getting wrapped up in the rep by rep by rep by rep stuff. But when you look at this from 30,000 feet, given the context and nuance that we gave you to start this, a reminder of what time of year this is, the amount of snaps, if there's a big jump, then it's noteworthy. And Drake Maye is not only quarterback 2, he has seen a significant amount of snaps compared to what he was getting at OTAs. Jacoby Brissett, this is according to Andrew Callahan of the Boston Herald. Jacoby Brissett yesterday, he had 30 reps as QB1. 30. Maye had 29. Bailey Zappi had 13. Joe Milton had 6. Here we are. Joe Milton, 6 snaps, more of a practice squad guy, as I've said. I think he's either practice squad, emergency third quarterback, whatever they want to do roster-wise. But he's going to be behind everybody else in this moment. And he should be. He has a lot to learn, a lot to tweak. So Joe Milton got 6 reps yesterday, which is, we're going to have you throw a couple of footballs to make sure that you're still involved. The real difference, though, is how close Brissett and Maye were yesterday with their snaps. So not only is Drake Maye QB2, but his snaps, his reps, are starting to get closer to Brissett's snaps. They were practically even yesterday. 30 for Brissett, 29 for Maye. Bailey Zappi clearly behind Drake Maye now at 13. He's off in the distance. There is a hierarchy that has been carved out now in the quarterback room. And it's the hierarchy that we expected at some point. I thought it might come at training camp. But here we are. First mandatory minicamp, and it seems like Drake Maye has already given the Heisman Trophy stiff arm to Bailey Zappi. Get to the back of the room, Bailey. I appreciate you, but I was the 3rd pick in the draft, and I am ready to progress quicker than some might have thought. So Maye is clearly quarterback 2. He is clearly getting snaps at the rate of Jacoby Brissett. These are significant things. Again, we're not sitting here telling you or predicting that Drake Maye is going to start week 1. We can only tell you the progression that he's made. And he has made a big-time leap when it comes to snaps and reps at practice. And it seems like, looking at the reps and looking at him being QB2, it certainly seems like Drake Maye has creeped up a little bit on Brissett from when you go back to rookie minicamp. And when you get 29 snaps, again, Maye gets 29 snaps and Brissett gets 30. Drake Maye getting 29 snaps should tell us, it should tell me, should tell you that the coaches are starting to trust the rookie. You're not getting as many snaps as the starting quarterback at mandatory minicamp unless you have earned some trust. The coaches giving Maye that many snaps yesterday at practice tells us that he has started to earn the trust of the coaching staff. It's just logical thinking here, right? If they weren't beginning to trust the rookie, then he'd be getting the same amount of snaps as Zappe. He'd be splitting snaps with Zappe instead of splitting snaps with Jacoby Brissett. That's a positive. It's a huge positive in the progression of your rookie quarterback. And if you don't believe me, there were glowing reviews from the writers, and I'll get into those glowing reviews in a minute. First, I remind you, as you're watching this podcast, if you like the content, love the content, you appreciate the alternative that we are giving you to some other local media. Not to say they're doing it wrong. We just do it different. Give us that like. Click that thumbs up on YouTube, the channel. That's how we beat the algorithm. Click the like button, which is the thumbs up. Don't forget to comment on the video and subscribe. Trying to get to 3,500 subscribers. We need your support. Like, comment, subscribe, Spotify, Apple Pods, rate, and review. So let's go to some of these glowing reviews from the local media yesterday as they wrote about Drake Maye. Mark Daniels posted, Maye has been fire emojis today. This has been his best practice so far. Went 3 for 3 with 3 touchdowns in the last 7 versus 7 period. Impressive day for the rookie. Doug Kide posted, best practice so far for Drake Maye. I had him with 18 for 23 with touchdowns to Jaheim Bell, easy for me to say, Kayshon Boutte, and LaMichael Petway. Brissett was 12 of 23. Zappe threw an interception to Duggar. Joe Milton was 3 of 6. Evan Lazar wrote this at Patriots.com. Overall, Maye won the day. There's a lot to weigh regarding the Week 1 starter, but Maye appears to be ahead of schedule. Tom Curran on Early Edition, hence the title of my podcast today. Curran said that Maye looked, quote-unquote, outstanding on NBC Sports Boston last night. He looked seamless. Wasn't clearly visible that he was a rookie quarterback trying to get his feet wet. My buddy Greg Bedard, people would call Bedard the wet blanket. Bedard wrote at BSJ last night, probably Maye's best period of the season was a 7-on-7 in the red zone, through touchdowns to Rager, Bell, and Boutte. Bedard also had Maye in his 3-up section. He wrote, through 4 practices, my impression is he's pretty good 7-on-7, but when the pass rush is involved, he struggles a bit. Nothing surprising, but it illustrates the long road he's on. He closed with, his red zone 7-on-7 period was pinpoint and exciting to watch. So it's not just me throwing stuff up against the wall and giving you delusions of grandeur about this rookie quarterback. It's looking at the steps in progression. It's him checking the boxes off on the fundamentals, then leapfrogging Bailey Zappe as the backup quarterback, and now at mandatory minicamp yesterday, holding that position as QB2 and receiving even more reps, only 1 rep less than the projected starting quarterback, Jacoby Brissett. And then you have all of these writers. Now, Andrew Callahan was a little bit more cool on Maye's performance than others, but the vast majority of people that watched that practice yesterday came away with one big takeaway. Drake Maye's legit, and he's getting better. That's what they came away with. It was his best practice. He's getting better as these practices go on, which is exactly what you want to see. Let me jump to a super chat. Ryan James. Thank you, Ryan. Judon is an offensive play wrecker. Re-up Matthew Judon. Yeah, I wouldn't mind it, Ryan. I think it's got to be more of the short-term variety. I don't want the Patriots to give him a 4-year extension, for example. He's in his early 30s. He's coming off of a biceps tear. there has to be some kind of middle ground. Judon's going to want the extension, and he has the argument for it. He's one of the best edge players in football. He's been highly productive for the Patriots when he's been on the field, so he has that argument. The Patriots, meanwhile, they also have a pretty good argument, which is you are in your 30s now. You just had a major injury that cost you most of the season a year ago, and we're not super comfortable forking over a 4-year contract extension to somebody under those circumstances. We love you, Matthew, but we are trying to be responsible here, and we don't want to go a little bit bananas and pay you for your age 36 season. If they could come to a meeting in the middle, I'm all for it. I have zero issue with the idea of extending Matthew Judon. He's one of your best players. He's clearly one of your best defensive players. He's one of your only blue chip guys on this roster as of right now. Hopefully the rookie class will provide 1 or 2 more blue chips. But right now it's, Barmore, Gonzalez, Judon, and really that's it for blue chip talent. So I have no issue giving Judon a contract extension. I just would not give him 3 or 4 years. If it's a 2-year deal with some good money, I could live with that. Appreciate the super chat. If you want to jump to the front of the line, you can send your super chat. You also help the show financially, which we really appreciate. So here's what's been reported and or known about Drake Maye, okay? And we're gonna go back to this idea that it's June. We're 1 mandatory minicamp practice in. A lot can happen. A lot can change. We can only evaluate what we've seen up to this point. And here's what's been reported and or what we know about Maye. His fundamentals have improved. Everybody who's watched him says, and fortunately I'll be out there tomorrow to see him with my own eyes, but everybody that has watched him says his fundamentals have gotten better. His footwork is better. His reading of progressions is getting better. So fundamentally, he's improving. He has officially leapfrogged Bailey Zappi and is now sitting in the quarterback 2 slot, which is nice to see because it's early. I thought we might be talking about this when we get to training camp. We'd be talking about this late July. Here we are, early to mid-June, and Maye's already made that move. His repetitions have been tightening. They're tightening between Brissett and Drake Maye. Maye is getting closer to Jacoby Brissett via the reps at practice. That shows us he's earned trust with his coaches, and it shows us that he's made a little bit of a push, relatively speaking. He's made a push from where he was at a couple of weeks ago to where he is at right now. And that push has been good enough to get him close to what Brissett is doing at practice as far as volume. That means something. He has shown us flashes of brilliance, and he has no doubt surefire, exciting talent. This is what has been reported, and this is what we know right now. Now, what's been said regarding Drake Maye? The coaches have been impressed. I don't think the coaches are coming out there and throwing verbal bouquets at the feet of Maye unless they really honestly mean it. Because the last thing this coaching staff wants to do is build the expectation level too unreasonable for the fan base that they anticipate Maye being quarterback 1 week 1 and lighting the world on fire. Their job is to temper the expectations. So when the coaching staff is saying that they're impressed, like Alex Van Pelt, and Mayo is talking about Maye is heading in the right direction. Jacoby Brissett yesterday really spoke well of Maye and the progress he's made so far in camp. I don't think that's just lip service. People have been impressed with Maye's work ethic, with his ability on the field, and his progression. What has also been said is that he's learning quicker than anticipated. The Patriots, some of them have admitted that Maye is ahead of the curve. He's learned things quicker than they thought he would. His footwork has improved quicker than they thought that it would, which is fantastic news. Drafting Maye 3rd, all we knew was that it was going to take some time. And if you didn't know that, then you weren't paying attention or you just weren't too deep into the draft process, which, by the way, is fine. You have a life to live. You've got things to do. But leading up to the draft, everybody was talking about, including this guy right now, speaking with all of you on this Tuesday morning, Drake Maye is going to take some time. You draft him, you got to think about what he's going to be in 2025, 2026. We thought it might take him a full year to learn some of this fundamental stuff. He's already checking those boxes within the first month or two. That's fantastic. Even if he's not ready to start week 1 and go bananas, it is great that his fundamental structure, his foundation, is ahead of where we thought he would be, including the coaching staff, because they've told us that exact thing. He's learning quicker on the job than they thought he would. There has been zero evidence of any setbacks in this process. Not to say he's been flawless, far from it, but there's been nothing at practice. There's been nothing reported. There's been nothing that these reporters at these practices have seen and written about that would tell you Maye has taken a step back in any kind of way. No step backs, no setbacks. He continues to progress. The process continues to go as well as I think we could have hoped. And it feels right on pace for training camp. It really does. It feels like Maye is creeping up. And by the time we get to late July, get into those preseason games, those joint practices, we will have a legitimate quarterback competition. And if you're a Patriots fan, you should be ecstatic about that. If that's where this leads, if we're talking about a Drake Maye versus Jacoby Brissett, honest to goodness, quarterback competition as we get ready for the preseason, that's all that you could ask for. That means Drake Maye has done more than enough to start pushing the starting quarterback. Here's what Jeff Howe said in The Athletic. He wrote this morning. Even with Maye adjusting to the speed of the pro game, he was effective Monday and made enough eye-popping plays to feel encouraged about his trajectory. He'll almost certainly open training camp as Brissett's backup, but fans should focus more on the middle of August. This is something that we've said on this podcast before, right? Everybody's paying attention to every single bit of minutia as far as, oh, this was a check down. This was a great throw down the seam. Check down, check down, check. It's more about 30,000 feet than it is the day-to-day. We could talk about the day-to-day as far as his progression goes, as I just did, but we always have to keep in mind the 30,000-foot view. And the 30,000-foot view is, will Drake Maye push Brissett by August? Because if he's pushing Brissett by August, he has a legitimate shot at starting this season as your QB1, which would be ahead of what people thought. Pay attention to August, late July, early August, if that push is happening. And that's what Jeff Howe writes. Fans should focus more in the middle of August. If Maye can get into a rhythm by about the third week of camp and stack days together, especially in more competitive practices, the number 3 overall pick will have a real shot to usurp Brissett. July and August could be very interesting. Very interesting. How uncomfortable is Maye going to make this for Brissett? And I don't mean from a personal level, of course. I'm talking about on the field. How much is the rookie quarterback going to make it uncomfortable for the veteran? Is he going to push him out of his starting spot? Is he going to play well enough in more competitive practices, in these joint practices? Is he going to, as Jeff Howe wrote, stack those days together to push Brissett? Could be very interesting if he does. Don't forget to like, comment, and subscribe. Those 3 things don't cost you a cent, but they help us out an awful lot. Try to build this community, pick up those eyeballs as we get closer to training camp. Like, comment, subscribe, rate and review Spotify, Apple Pods. That's how you can help this show. You can also help this show by sending some super chats. We've got some other OTA notes that you definitely want to hear, including some thoughts about the offensive line. We'll get to those in a couple of minutes. But first, got a couple of super chats to hit. McDowell's Human Resources Department. Things are looking refreshing. Not expecting a whole lot this season, but it definitely feels much better than it did last season. Cheers, brother. Cheers. I appreciate you. And yes, it does feel better than it's felt the last couple of years. There's no comparison to 2022. We all agree that was an absolute debacle. If you're reading comments from a lot of these players on the offensive side of the football, certainly feels like they're comfortable with the coaching. They understand it's a new system. They understand it's going to take time. There's been a ton of turnover within the coaching staff and on the field for the offense. But it does feel like there's a plan. It feels like that plan makes a lot of sense. And it also feels like the players are picking up what they're putting down, which wasn't always the case the last couple of training camps and mandatory minicamps and OTAs. So far, so good. And I have to make sure that I impress this upon all of you. Just because we're talking about this OTA and minicamp being better, just because if we get to training camp and it looks better and it feels better, and just because this team, in my estimation, has just got better during the offseason and this roster is better than it was a year ago, do not get it twisted. I am not sitting here in June telling you this is a 9-win team, a 10-win team, an 11-win team. I'm not telling you that. I'm not going to give you my 2024 record projection until we get close to the season. That's how I do it. I'm just telling you that right now it feels better than it's felt the last couple of years. And it seems like guys are on the same page. Appreciate the super chat, McDowell's. Another super chat, ATH after the huddle. So if Maye shows he's capable as a week one starter from now through preseason games to week one, would we still start Brissett or Maye in that scenario? I think if you're going to have a legitimate competition, if you are going to preach to this locker room that whoever plays the best gets the job, I think you've got to give Drake Maye the job. If he outperforms Jacoby Brissett, if he's the better quarterback, if you're going to live by your word and you are going to commit to this locker room that you're going to play the best guys, you're going to play Drake Maye because the locker room is going to know that he's the better quarterback. And what you don't want is to have the better quarterback sitting because that could cause some issues. So if you're selling to the team competition with which Mayo and Wolf have both sold heavy this offseason, if you're telling the players we're going to have legitimate competitions and the best players are going to get the starting jobs, if Drake Maye is better than Jacoby Brissett by the end of all of this and we're getting ready for week one, then Maye should start. We've said this for the last couple of months since the draft, and I have stood consistent on this. When do you start Drake Maye? You start Drake Maye when he's ready to play football. When he's the best quarterback, you start him, unless you have a 5-alarm fire on the offensive line. And what I mean by that is last year, first month and a half. If you think the offensive line can't even compete, then you might step back a little bit and you might massage the message to the team as you get ready for the season and roll Brissett out there. But in a vacuum, if Maye is the best quarterback at camp, then he should be the starting quarterback. You play your best players. Thanks, ATH. Appreciate the super chats. You can continue to throw those my way to jump to the front of the line. All right, some other OTA notes that I would say are significant notes, by the way, including thoughts on the offensive line. Got a lot of thoughts on this. So 11 on 11s yesterday. Owenu was back splitting time between right guard and right tackle. That's fascinating to me. Also, Caden Wallace was again at right tackle. That is also interesting and fascinating to me. Both of those things lead me to many questions. Owenu splitting time between guard and tackle In Caden Wallace, last week at OTAs, the last time the media was allowed to watch this team at OTAs, Wallace was at right tackle. First day mandatory minicamp, Wallace spent his time at right tackle. A lot of questions here, right? First, why is Onwenu splitting time? What are we doing? I thought we were committed to Onwenu playing right tackle. I thought that was his spot. We've talked about this all offseason. You paid him like a tackle. He has told the media he's been training as a tackle. Wolf and Mayo have both said that he's going to be a tackle. We were all under the impression that Onwenu was playing tackle and tackle only. That was going to be his sole focus. He wasn't going to be jumping back and forth like he has in prior years. And I praise that idea. I praise the idea of allowing Onwenu to focus on one freaking position and to be at his best at that position. And if he was moving to tackle, make sure that he dedicates his entire time at playing that spot. Here we are, mandatory minicamp, and he's flippy, floppy, floppy, flippy, flippy, floppy. What in the world is going on? Is he your right tackle? If he is your right tackle, then keep him at right tackle. There's no need to cross-train him at other positions. There's no need to slide him to guard so he can get some reps there. We know he can play guard. He's been one of the better guards in the NFL. So if he's going to be right tackle and you are committed to this idea, then keep him at right tackle. I don't understand it. Now let's get to Wallace. Wallace at right tackle again. Does this tell us the left tackle experiment is over? Is it already dead and buried? Is it done? Wallace was right tackle at OTAs. Wallace right tackle at mandatory minicamp. If you're trying to get Caden Wallace to transition from right tackle to left tackle, it would only stand to reason that he would get consistent snaps and reps at what? Left tackle. It's a difficult transition. So if you're truly committed, just like if you're truly committed to Mike Onwenu right tackle this year, if you're truly, truly committed to show that full conviction that you believe Wallace can be a left tackle at the NFL level, then you need to give the young man all of his reps at left tackle. So why was he at right tackle at OTAs? Why was he at right tackle yesterday? Why? The number one priority is trying to get him to the left side. He's not even playing on the left side. So is that experiment over with? And if so, you spent a top of the third round pick on a guy who's going to end up playing right tackle. Now, if he's great at right tackle, he's worth a third round pick, because if you can get a legitimate starter at any position in the NFL in the third round and they play at an average to above average level, then they're worth that pick. But one of the reasons why you chose Wallace, and many thought it was a reach, whatever. Some pundits, they are what they are. They have their own rankings. That's fine. Many said Wallace was a reach. Elliott Wolf fought back and said, hey, look, we think he can play on the left side. You needed a left tackle in the draft. Going into the draft, we all thought you needed a left tackle. Onwenu was going to play right side. You drafted Wallace. You told us he was going to be capable of playing on the left side. Is the experiment dead already? Was it DOA? Because we're in June and Wallace is not playing on the left side. So it certainly seems like the Caden Wallace to the left side experiment hasn't necessarily gone as well as the Drake Maye progression early on. Now, here's what also I'll say. And people might say, well, Nick, you just went bananas, or you just got all passionate and worked up on Caden Wallace working on the right side. Here's what I will say. If the Patriots have decided that Wallace can't play left tackle, it's better to nip it in the bud early than let that continue. If Wallace has gone to the coaching staff and told them he's not comfortable playing on the left side, it is better to cut the cord right now than try to force the young man to switch sides. Because if you force him to try to switch sides and he ain't feeling it, you'll have a disaster on your hands. He'll lose his confidence. He'll deflate as a football player. And most importantly, if you're forcing him on the left side and he's not confident on the left side, he could get leaky, and now that could lead to injury. So if the experiment is dead because they've evaluated Wallace, they got him into camp, they watched him practice, and they said, he can't do that. We're not going to move him to the left side. He just can't do it. Or he's gone to the coaching staff and said that he doesn't feel comfortable that he can do it. Moving him back to his natural position is the right thing to do, if that's what's happening here. So, yeah, it sucks that they drafted him and thought that he could play left tackle. And that was a big part of the reason why they drafted him at the top of the 3rd round. It sucks that he's not going to play left tackle if that's the case. However, it's the smart move for the football team and the player that if they have decided he can't play on the left side, instead of trying to force the square peg in a round hole, just put him on the right side and say, do the best you can. Because you don't want the player to ultimately fail. You would rather Wallace be a good to very good right tackle than a complete failure at left tackle and out of the league within the first 2 years of his career. So it's disappointing. It's frustrating if he does not play on the left side. And if he wasn't good enough on the left side to even get a game in preseason wise. But ultimately, it makes sense for the player and the team to bail on the left side idea if it ain't working. If one or both involved here, the team or the player, don't feel right. I'd rather them admit that they were wrong, put him back where he is at right tackle, and try to figure out left tackle without Wallace in the equation, because that's the best that you can do for the football team. So maybe they swung and missed on the left side thing. Maybe not. Maybe they're trying different combinations. Maybe tomorrow at mandatory minicamp number 2, Caden Wallace will be on the left side. I can only go off of what we know right now. And last week and this week, he's on the right side. I also wonder if Sidy Sow is stapled at left guard. Seems that way, right? Because Mike Onwenu is, going between right tackle and right guard. Nick Leverett was there at right guard yesterday when Onwenu was at right tackle. Sow seems to be stapled in at left guard. So Sidy Sow is replacing Cole Strange. So you've got Sidy Sow left guard, David Andrews center, Nick Leverett / Onwenu right guard, Onwenu / Caden Wallace right tackle. I'll get to left tackle in a minute. But that's what it's looking like right now. It'll be interesting if Onwenu ends up playing guard after all this talk about him playing tackle. All right, let's get to left tackle. Because left tackle, the news about left tackle was actually pretty good yesterday from what I read. Greg Bedard actually had Chuks Okorafor on his 3-up list. Bedard wrote, "This is really tough to gauge, but I thought Okorafor being back on the left side settled things a bit. I did not sense all that much pressure from the left. It was mostly on the other side." So Bedard says that Okorafor was not losing his ass yesterday at left tackle. That when Okorafor played left tackle, the offensive line on that side of the ball steadied. That would be great news. The million-dollar question is whether or not Okorafor can hold up at left tackle. If Okorafor can hold up at left tackle, now a lot of these questions go away. Because if Okorafor is your starting left tackle, you don't need Caden Wallace to move over to the left side. You survive that. You have Okorafor left tackle, then you have Wallace right tackle, then you move Onwenu to right guard, and then you have Andrews, and then you have Sidy Sow. The million-dollar question is Okorafor. Can he hold up enough? And remember, you can help one lineman. If Okorafor plays average football, you can live with that. You can live with an average left tackle in 2024. You can send help his way. Alex Van Pelt and his play calling can help one side of the line by manipulating the defense, by rolling out to the right side with the quarterback and staying away from the left side. You can do certain things football-wise to protect one of the two tackles. So if Okorafor can hold his water, that really changes the rest of the line. Because I am confident. I think City So will be fine at left guard. We know who David Andrews is. No matter where Michael Onwenu plays, I feel good about him. Right guard, right tackle, whatever, he's going to be good. Caden Wallace as a right tackle should be good enough. So if Okorafor can hold his water at left tackle, that really changes the overall picture of this offensive line. It's really early. We'll see how he does. But Greg Bedard is the wet blanket. And if Bedard is telling you that Okorafor settled that offensive line at left tackle, that's good to hear. Not the end-all, be-all, but it's better than reading Greg writing that Okorafor was a disaster, right? If we've got Caden Wallace staying on the right side, meanwhile, Okorafor is a mess. He's a turnstile. Now we got big problems. At least as of yesterday, Okorafor has not been a disaster. He's held his own. Now they got to put pads on and do all this stuff, as we know. We get it. But we go off of what's being reported right now and what these guys are doing on the field right now. So can Okorafor continue to hold up? Like, comment, subscribe, rate, and review. Keep pumping those thumbs up. Keep pumping those comments and subscriptions. That's how we build this community as we get closer to the football season. So we talked about Matthew Judon earlier. Another extension conversation. Ramondre Stevenson. And Stevenson surprised many people in attendance yesterday by telling them that he's pretty close to a contract extension. He feels like he's pretty close to getting one from Elliott Wolf. Now, a few things on this. I am not the biggest proponent of spending a ton of money at the running back position. I am not the biggest fan of dumping the bag on the table for a running back. I feel like you can replace running backs at a relatively easy level, unless you're talking about somebody like Run CMC or Saquon Barkley or those truly special dual threat running backs, so to speak, right? Guys that can catch passes, yards after the catch, and also devastating running back, all of that stuff. So when you look at the running back market, it's really interesting because before this offseason, running backs, they were out there forever. Nobody was interested in the running back position. Nobody wanted to pay these guys. This offseason, the running backs were some of the first players off the board. Josh Jacobs got his deal. Saquon Barkley got his deal. DeAndre Swift got his deal. All these running backs went off the board rather quickly, at least much quicker than I thought they would. Christian McCaffrey just got a 2-year, $38 million extension. So almost $20 million a year for McCaffrey on the AAV. Again, McCaffrey is a different running back, and he, for my money, is the best running back in the league down to down because of his versatility and his explosivity. The running back is, the running back market's interesting. With that hot offseason, the CMC deal, where does that lead you with Stevenson? What kind of deal are we talking about? And that's the most important part of this conversation. If you sit back and you say to yourself, you can't pay him because he's a running back, I think that is the wrong way to look at it. The devil's in the details. Is it a long-term deal? Is it a 1-year extension, 2-year extension? And how much money are we talking? Stevenson is not going to get McCaffrey money. I don't think he's getting Saquon Barkley money. If you tell me that Stevenson signs a contract extension between 2 and 3 years, and he's getting reasonable money, let's call it, I don't know what it would be. Got to look at the running back market money. What, 9, 10 million, somewhere around there? If you're telling me it's a 2-year deal, maybe 3-year deal on reasonable money, then I can deal with that. So looking at the average a year, Josh Jacobs makes $12 million a year. So I was right, about 9, 10 million. Joe Mixon's at 9.875, Swift's at 8 million, Derrick Henry's at 8 million. Alvin Kamara's up at 15 million, Jonathan Taylor's 14 million, Saquon's 12.5. So if Ramondre Stevenson signs a deal that's 2 or 3 years in length and averages at about $8 or $9 million a year, not a big deal. Fine with it. Fine with it. If you want to pay him the same amount of money that DeAndre Swift is making, fine with it. $8 million a year. I'm good. If you're going to give Ramondre Stevenson a 3-year contract with an AAV of like Jonathan Taylor's $14 million, then that's crazy. So the devil's in the details. If you can get Stevenson done, 2 to 3 year deal at about $8 to $9 million AAV, fine with it. Maybe they have to pay $10 million because he's younger than some of those guys. I just don't want him in Saquon territory. 12.5. That to me is overpaying a running back when you can replace that guy. Stevenson is also your best offensive player going into this season. He's your top guy right now. If you listed everybody on that offense, you'd say Stevenson is your best offensive player right now with a gun to your head. I don't find it a bad idea to keep your good players. I've said that all off season long. I'll continue to say that. I would imagine that we're looking at, and don't buy into the funny money. The funny money might make it look like Stevenson gets, if he does sign an extension, 11, 12 million a year. You've got to look at the actual details of the contract. I would have to imagine we're looking at a 2 to 3 year deal at about, 30 million for a 3-year deal, somewhere in that territory. And I don't think that's terrible business. You've got the cap space. He's a good player. He's got himself in terrific shape, according to reports. The run game is important with this offense and this scheme, the West Coast. So I would not have a big issue with that. I would doubt that it's long-term. I mean, I'd be surprised if it's 3 years. I'd lean more towards 2. But if they have to give him a funny money 3rd year, then they got to give him the funny money 3rd year. All right. Couple more notes. Not done yet. Lots of Patriots talk today. Hopefully all of you are enjoying this. Like, comment, subscribe, rate, and review, and tell me that you are enjoying it. Jalen Polk. Jalen Polk had his best practice yesterday. So your 2 top rookies, your 1st-round pick, your 2nd-round pick, had their best days at practice. We went through Maye. You can check it out if you missed it earlier in the podcast. Jalen Polk. Andrew Callahan posted this. Polk with 2 big boy touchdown catches in tight red zone 7-on-7s, including 1 versus Christian Gonzalez. So Jalen Polk. Thank you, Maryland. Maryland's enjoying it. I appreciate you, Maryland. I enjoy your support. You've been there since, I think, day 1, pretty much an OG. So Jalen Polk, 2 big boy touchdown catches in tight red zone 7-on-7s, 1 versus Gonzo. Jalen Polk also made Greg Bedard's 3-up. Here's what Bedard wrote. Thought he was awesome today. Just looks like a pro with his body control and the way he catches the ball with his hands. I said this last week, and I'm sure I'll say it every week. Every day you watch Polk, the more impressed you are with him. I said this earlier. Bedard's the wet blanket. I'll read that one more time about Jalen Polk. Because if Greg Bedard is writing this about Jalen Polk, that'd make me very happy as a Patriots fan. Thought he was awesome today. Looks like a pro with his body control and the way he catches the ball with his hands. Said this last week, and I'm sure I'll say it every week. Every day you watch Polk, the more impressed you are with him. I believe that Jalen Polk is going to be an immediate contributor to this football team. I think he is going to catch 40 to 50 footballs this year. I believe as long as he stays healthy, he can get you 450, 500 yards, get you a handful of touchdowns. My belief as Patriots fans are going to be very happy with Jalen Polk. He might not be the wide receiver 1 that everybody wants. But by the end of this year, I think he's going to have a lot of fans in New England. I'm confident in that. 2 other notes. Hunter Henry was on Bedard's 3 down. Here's what Bedard wrote. Henry hasn't been bad or anything, but he hasn't been much of a factor while other tight ends are flashing. I'm wondering if he's lost a step. Something to monitor going forward. I'm going to give Hunter Henry the benefit of the doubt. He was good last year, given the circumstances. He's a veteran. It's early in camp. I'm going to give him more time. New offense, new quarterbacks. We'll see. But there has been some things written, aside from Bedard. I think it was Andrew Callahan wrote, wondering if Henry is struggling to get as much separation at times as he's been able to get in prior years. Last year ended with an injury. So we'll keep an eye on Hunter Henry. But I'm going to give him more time. Maybe he's got to round into shape a little bit more. Veteran, new offense, all that. The attendance at camp yesterday, if you were wondering, Joshua Uche, Sione Takitaki, Kendrick Bourne, Cole Strange, Jelani Tavai, and Jake Andrews were absent. Javon Baker was limited, so Baker did not do too much. Interestingly enough, he was running routes, but they weren't throwing him the football. I'm not a doctor. I'm not smart enough to be a doctor. But when a wide receiver is running routes, but they're not throwing the football to him, that would lead me to believe it's an upper body injury, right? That maybe he can't extend his arms. Maybe it's a chest thing, a shoulder thing. Speculation, not a doctor, but it's weird that he's running routes. They're just not throwing the football to him. He wouldn't be running routes if it was a leg issue, a groin issue, any of that stuff, right? So it feels like it's an upper body issue for Javon Baker. Devon Godchow, who missed media access OTA practices, was there yesterday, but he was not stretching. Wore a helmet, not a jersey. He did not take part in drills. And we'll see if Godchow is officially holding in or not. Because he wasn't seen at OTAs, and he didn't do anything yesterday. I mean, the man did not even stretch. I stretch every day. He wasn't even stretching. So maybe we have a hold-in situation with Devon Godchow. It's the last year of his contract. Christian Barmore just got that big fat-ass contract extension. Maybe Godchow wants to get paid a little extra scuttle. Maybe he's looking for an extension. And don't overlook Godchow. The Patriots were literally one of the best defenses that we have seen in a long, long, long time against the run last year. Godchow was a big part of that. Do not overlook him. So we'll see how that goes. We're all paying attention to Matthew Judon. Maybe the contract situation we need to be paying more attention to is Godchow's. Because it certainly seems like my man is holding in. He's holding in. I'm getting out. Almost an hour of Patriots talk for all of you. Hopefully you enjoyed it. Don't forget, before you go, give us that like, that thumbs up. Sends more people over to the channel. That's how the YouTube algorithm works. Like, comment, subscribe. Always love those subscriptions. Doesn't cost you a single penny, not one. Rate and review. I'm out on this Tuesday. Again, Minicamp I'm going to tomorrow. So you will have a podcast at 11 a.m. It will be a recorded podcast, most likely. But I'm still going to give you good content, as good as I can give you. So tomorrow morning, we're back. Recorded version, 11 a.m. I'll go to Minicamp tomorrow. I'll have Minicamp thoughts on Thursday to go along with Game 3 reaction. But I'll talk to you all tomorrow. I appreciate your time. I appreciate the likes, comments, subscriptions, the ratings, and the reviews. This has been the Nick Cattle Show.